Hello everyone, I'm Kieran Kent, Managing Director of Propeller Group. This next Comms Club panel discussion is Communication by Association. Delighted to be joined today by three of the leading senior comms professionals representing the advertising industry trade bodies. Matt Bourn, Director of Communications at the Advertising Association, Abby Slater, Director of Communications at ISBA, and Tessa Gooding, Comms Director at the IPA. Thanks very much all of you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So we'll have a wide-ranging discussion on a number of different topics. We'll obviously talk about the role and the mission of trade bodies. We'll talk about the benefits to members. We'll talk about some of the challenges that you have dealing with different stakeholders. And then we'll also talk about some of the industry-wide issues that we're all trying to make progress around: diversity and inclusion, climate action, talent retention, industry burnout. So quite a bit to get through in the course of our discussion. But let's start with your own journeys and your backgrounds and why you've ended up doing the comms roles that you do. And Matt, I'll start with yourself because you've got a similar background to me as a former agency MD, now heading up comms, the Advertising Association. Tell us about why you took on that role and what excites you about the job you do.
So I always say, when people say, you know, how have you ended up where you are now, it started when I was a paper boy. And essentially, like at the age of 13, I fell in love with newspapers, and I read every newspaper every single morning on my round. And then from there, I just fell in love with the media. So I studied it. I went on to university and studied it. And then I sort of found this natural landing point, which was somewhere between business psychology and media. And it was comms, and it was the idea of influencing. But I only ever wanted to do it for media. So, and I did film PR, I did tech PR, I did TV, went on to run Braben. And, you know, when I got the opportunity to then take on the role at the AA, it was like, well, it's the perfect train set. So that's kind of how I've ended up where I am. Great. Abby, how about your journey?
I steal a line from my Director General, Phil Smith. He says he has a Mongol career, but like Matt, I have the thread of media running through it. But first job was classified sales for the Evening Standard, where I was called a floater, short for floating canvasser, but not a particularly great job title. But then through various marketing communications roles. When I left my previous job, which was DMGT, corporate comms, I had a bit of time out, and this job came along, and I thought, that sounds really boring. Trade bodies, for me, were notoriously slow. They weren't exciting places to be. I just had this kind of reputation that they were old-fashioned. But I thought, I'll go along and meet Phil, and I was totally sold. As soon as I met him, heard the vision for ISBA, realised it would be right at the centre of all the things that I love, so marketing, media, advertising. So I'm very glad I went against my gut instinct.
Fantastic. Tessa, how about you?
Yes, well, I had a sort of a late start. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do when I first started working. I think I was age 17 at the time, and I tried various industries. And it was when I got into, actually I worked for ESSO, Public Affairs Department, for about 5 years, and they had a huge department, 25 people dealing with government relations, press relations, community relations, making videos, meeting design companies, and I thought, I really love this. And so I saw the job advertised at the IPA, and I was told afterwards that there were 75 people applied, which was sort of I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, I felt I could make a difference, and actually I thought I'd blown the interview because I went in and I was quite cross about some of the things that they had produced. And I think the Director General at the time thought, oh God, she obviously knows what she's doing. And once, you know, when you think you've just blown it, and so you just keep going instead of stopping. So I'd done all this red lines across their annual report going, I wouldn't have done it like this, look at all this repetitive stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, oh, well, there we go. And I left thinking that they would ring me afterwards and say, thank you so much, but, you know, no thank you. And they said, yes, please. And actually what I'd loved about the job is that it's given me autonomy, and I think that's the joy of being in a trade body. Because I did about 5 or 6 other sectors and industries before the IPA. And all that sort of collective knowledge from ESSO, I'd been able to put into what was at the time, one person, and developed from there. So I've enjoyed it ever since.
Great. Now let's talk about the role and the mission of each industry body. Obviously, you're all representing different industry bodies here. Perhaps we'll start with yourself, Abby, and obviously the ISBA, the voice of the British advertiser. Let's talk about your mission as an industry body and your comms objectives personally.
Yeah, so obviously we are the only trade body that represents the advertiser themselves, so brands in essence, and we're there to be advocates for them, to give them a voice, basically to constructively challenge the advertising and marketing sort of status quo. And we always joke that we're like the plumbers of the industry because we kind of get there and tinker around and just try and fix things, often behind the scenes. It's not like the glamorous side of it particularly. So my role is as much as it is about communicating with the wider stakeholders, it is, primarily it's about talking to our members and making sure that they know what's going on, they've got all the information that they need, that they're aware of what's happening in government. So it's across a real breadth of things, and that's the kind of the most important part of what I do. But another important part is obviously collaborating with these guys and making sure that where we've got aligned interests, so we do talk a lot. It's one of those jobs where you just have to talk to lots of people.
Well, we'll come back to that shortly. Tessa, you've got to focus on practitioners.
Yes, so for us, again, Abby's representing clients, we're representing the agency side, so, and we're a spokesman for the business, so we're there to promote the value of agencies, and we have a 3-pillar strategy, so proving the value of what we do and the effectiveness awards is part of that. It's helping agencies build better businesses. We had our business growth conference yesterday, that helps them do that, and also to attract the right talent to the business. So those are our sort of 3 core pillars, and we have a number of activities to sort of support that, and obviously we're a spokesman for the business, so any other thing that comes in, we obviously we are the voice of the agency business and we'll respond accordingly whatever the topic is.
And Matt, at the Advertising Association, you're a link between practitioners, politicians and policymakers. Tell us about your challenges dealing with different stakeholders there.
So we're unique in the sense that we're made, our members, the core AA membership is all the trade bodies that are across the advertising industry, including ISBA and including the IPA. So our job as the AA is to be the first port of call on behalf of the industry with government, principally. It's like government have got a problem with advertising or government wants something from advertising. The first port of call should be the AA, and then the job of the AA is to find a consensus point of view across media owners, agencies, advertisers, and in the last 10, 15 years, tech companies as well. If we can't find consensus, then that is then over to the individual parts of the industry to then talk to government about. But the job of the AA principally is our mission is to make the case for responsible advertising and its contribution to people, society, business and the economy. And the big shift that has happened really in the 5 years I've been in the AA is when I started it was only about the economic case, and now it's about the societal case as much as it is the economy. That's the big shift.
And you've all got slightly different objectives as industry bodies, but we've touched earlier on the fact that you do need to work together, you need to collaborate. So let's have a bit of a discussion around how you do that. Do you want to kick us off, Tessa?
Yes, well, I suppose the most recent example has been the Pitch Positive pledge, hasn't it? Obviously, we chat a lot as a group of 3, but there are initiatives when we can come together. So the Pitch Positive pledge was an initiative by Julian Douglas, previous president, and he felt, and it's all about improving behaviours during the pitch. So you get rid of things like don't call a pitch on Christmas Eve, do you know what I mean? Think about the people, think about the timelines, think about how many people are involved, because there is an impact on mental health. So obviously agencies doing it on their own is not very strong, because we're obviously the reactor to the being asked to pitch. So we felt it would only work if we got ISBA on board. So that's when the conversations happened with Phil and the team at ISBA, and so we were able to work collaboratively together to pull together some pitch principles. So that was last year, and that still goes on, and we got various people to sort of sign up to that they would change their behaviours, and we're monitoring how that is. And by all accounts, it has given people something to measure their behaviour against, and checklist as to, am I being unreasonable? You know, is this going to help or hinder? Do I need the pitch, etc., etc.? You know, when am I calling it? How many people are participating in it? So that, I think, has been a recent example. So there are more. There's the effectiveness stuff as well, isn't there? You being part of the effectiveness.
We do work
leadership.
together on quite a lot of initiatives, not always as publicly as you might think. But LEAD's a great example. Our annual joint conference.
I was going to talk more, like, more from a personal point of view. So when I started the role, the chap that was doing the interim cover was a brilliant guy called Dom, and he was sort of helping me in the first few weeks, kind of getting my head around the role. And one of the first things he said was, "You should be Abby." And
not me.
No.
I think I put it there first.
Yeah, and we met, and we kind of agreed that we all, both relatively new in the role, and we just needed a sort of open communications at all times. We then actively said, right, we need to do the same thing with Tessa. And between the three of us, we pretty much agreed we do 3 lunches a year, which one of us hosts each time. And those lunches are about personal relationship, but they're also about having this kind of constant
Tessa does bring a notebook.
Yeah.
We're sure it's not just love.
Constant open communication, because there are times when there will be tensions between what an advertiser wants to say, what an agency wants to say, what a tech company might be doing, and there is a little bit of tension. And our view is that whatever happens, whatever the position might be developing, we need to be able to talk. And we need to be able to text each other and say, look, this is happening, or actually a journo's just called about this issue. What, is it something you're going to respond to rather than us? Yeah, we've had that in the last 24 hours, right? With a national TV station asking us about a particular issue, and it's like, we can't comment on that because it's actually involving one of our members, so that's tricky. Do you want to? And you sort of bounce those things between us.
And we run press releases past each other, even if it might be a press release coming from us, but I'll let these guys know ahead of time. It's not to say we're like all happy and agreeing all the time, because we do disagree on issues. It's just we explain why we disagree in a really nice way.
That's the really good thing, because we trust each other and we have been so transparent. If something doesn't land well, we will share and go, just so you know, X, Y, and Z happened and blah, 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 which I think is useful feedback, because otherwise, people don't know, and you can then take what you've heard and take it back to your organisations or whatever, or agree to disagree, which I think is very healthy, sophisticated.
I mean, I think ultimately the three of us in our comms roles have a commonality, which is that we all want to see the best thing for the advertising industry and the people that work in it, and we also inevitably are kind of front line for when people have problems or issues with it, and we need to work out what the most constructive thing is that we can say about it, and usually there's a cross-checking on that to make sure we're all comfortable with that position before we fly out and say it.
I think we're quite comfortable with crisis communications, aren't we? Our skills are quite honed from previous jobs and whatever. It's being in the, I think it takes bravery to be sitting in the plate, and then you might see whatever, maybe unexpected, because obviously we do some reactive stuff as well as proactive stuff. And obviously the reactive stuff is you're not expecting it usually. So to actually sort of be that sensible grown-up voice. And the IPA we like to describe as a sage, so we know we're not hugely reactive, so you won't bounce us into an opinion, but we like to be thoughtful, we like to be evidence-based, and I think that's always very helpful to the sort of the wider debate, because if everybody's reactive and sort of starts rushing off down the road with opinions that are ill-informed, I think that as a trade body is exactly the opposite of what you want to be doing.
And if we look at benefits to members, Matt, let's start with you. What would you say are the main benefits to members for being part of an industry body like the Advertising Association?
So we have the sort of the big moments, like LEAD, which we collaborate with the IPA and ISBA on. And I get asked by comms folk, how do we get people up on stage to speak at lead in front of the industry and so on. And it doesn't work like that. I mean, basically, the way the AA works is we have working groups on the key work streams. And the senior leaders from our members take part in those working groups, and they shape the work streams. And then when it comes around to planning lead or planning any event or planning a round table that involves a government minister, planning a session at Cannes Lions or whatever it might be, on a particular topic, you say, right, okay, who's in the working group? Yeah. Who knows the stuff? Who's shaping this? Who's going to be a brilliant kind of representative for this? So the idea of sort of cold pitching, and I think that we've always said you get as much out of a trade association as you commit and put in. Yeah. And the more you put in, I think the more you get back, because what you get back is profile, reputation. You get a seat at the top table. You get to network, with peers. You get to be right at the front line of the biggest issues. You get the inside track on what government might be thinking about issues. So were I to go back into agency land again and be representing clients, I'd be saying, which trade associations are you a member of? How committed are you? What time are you putting in? What are the issues that you want to be seen to be leading on? And really encourage people to do that. Yeah.
Abby, benefits to members from your perspective at ISBA?
Everything we do at ISBA is driven by our members. So our members join because they want to have a voice and they want to make positive change to their industry. And by being part of ISBA, it allows them to do that. I mean, there are lots of other benefits as well. That's kind of the problem. But I'd say, the issues around working with government on advocacy and making sure that things aren't done to us. We have a say in it. And then there's all the, the good kind of soft benefits like training, best practice, spending time with your peers, going to events. We have a whole stream of webinars, and just getting involved. And I think that's absolutely right. That the more you put in, the better outcomes. And I think that's a great advice. And I'm going to steal it. Thanks.
That's good. Yes. Well, the other is networking obviously is very keen for a sort of member body, because obviously you can go cross agency. But against those pillars, we produce a lot of thought leadership. Mm-hmm. So, for example, yesterday at the Business Growth Conference, we had a new publication on in-housing and what it means for an agency and potential ways that they can change their business model if they haven't already, to consider the trends that are happening in that space. We also, because we're a spokesman and servicing body, we do value for money reports. So we monitor how much engagement there is with our members to us. So, for example, we have a legal team, we have an insight team. So we like to feed back to them how much their people are using our services. So I think that's quite important, because I think that can be hidden. So, for example, if you're sort of paying your subscription at or thinking about paying it, because we get members again to sign up every year. So it's not like you're a member and we go, thank goodness for that, we're going to forget about you. Every year we get our members to basically vote to be a member, which you could say is quite a sort of, hairy strategy. But actually, that's why these value for money reports are so important, because actually they might go, well, I haven't done much with the IPA, but if they can look at how much their people have used us and how many events they've attended, how much training there's been done, CPD, or all the things that we offer. So, because it's quite a sort of, a bit like ISBA, it's quite broad in terms of what we can get people to engage with. They can see the value.
And you'll obviously have different points of contact within the member organisations that you deal with. In terms of the comms and PR function within the member base, how much dialogue and interaction do you have with that audience on a week-to-week basis?
Lots. So I one of the things that I did when I started the AA was say, I really want to know all of my comms peers. So twice a year, once in January and a couple of weeks' time, July, we do a sort of an open breakfast to every comms practitioner from the AA and from membership. And we can have sort of 40, 50 people there in the room, and it's sort of an hour and a half. We talk about the things that we think are the big issues, and we just put on croissants for folk to get to know each other, and then kind of what's developed out of things like that is we have a Christmas comms drinks, which is kind of fun, and we have sort of people.
Welcome to attend.
Yeah.
You get invited.
And we sort of we'll get people together because we need the relationship with the comms directors. Particularly if it's a particular member that's in the firing line, you need to be able to talk to the comms person. As much as Stephen, as my chief exec, needs to be able to talk to the chief exec or MD of that business, I need to be able to talk to the comms lead on that, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm often asking members if they'll support, a piece of, press release, if there's a supportive quote, or prepared to do an interview, and they're great. They will. The other day we launched Phase 4 of Origin, and L'Oreal just stepped up and said, yeah, we'll do an interview in Marketing Week, and did a great piece, a really positive piece. So that tends to be my kind of day-to-day interactions, and normally around me saying, will you do this? Will you do that? But also because I have events within my remit as well, and obviously the website, then you deal with other members sort of day-to-day when they've got requests as well. So yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, you have to know who your members are, otherwise you're doing the job right, aren't you? So
yeah, I think there are different sort of entry points for every member within the sort of trade body relationship. So my public affairs colleagues will have a similar relationship with any PA or policy people. Commercial tends to have a relationship with the sales side of things as well, because it's sort of attuning what's going on, and that's about the relation. I don't think you just have a one-person relationship within it. You have multiple relationships.
Yeah. Tessa, how does it work?
Yeah, well, it's sort of very similar, and also we have council, we have committees, just main, and as you say, picking up the phone to somebody if there's something you need to talk to them on. If there's something the IPA needs to react on, we need to gather information. So again, we tend to go to the people that we need the information from as well. So again, it's a sort of never-ending sort of stream of conversation, really.
Mm-hmm. And the comms practitioners, our sort of network that we've built, it's brilliant because it's kind of reciprocal. They've got something really important to say and share, but we can help do that.
Yeah.
When we've got something really important that we'd like help sharing, they will help through their channels as well.
Yeah.
And when you consider the possibilities of amplifying across all of the different communications channels that we have within our membership between us, that covers the industry. Mm. It's a really strong kind of outreach.
Let's look now at some of the industry-wide initiatives that you are all involved in. The All-In Census is obviously one of those big initiatives. That's obviously a survey that tracks progress towards being an inclusive workplace, and I think there were 19,000 respondents to that survey this year, so that's the highest response figure. What are your general observations on this survey? Maybe, Abby, you kick us off.
First of all, a lot of people will say, well, you won't get the same level of response you got the first year, and we actually got more. So it just goes to show it's something really important. And Matt's point about us having this network to amplify communications, that's exactly how it worked, which was brilliant to see everyone working together. And the results, did show there were improvements in certain areas, which is great. But I think it just says that we need to do more. That's the main output for me from All-In Census, that we need to keep doing it. That there is a real job to do here, and it's actually quite positive as well in terms of the great stuff that is going on. So yeah, good, but could do better.
Yeah. Well, actually, and also I think this year's versus the last time we did it, it was much easier to fill in, and I think people really welcomed the sort of, they didn't go, if you started asking a sort of a train of thought, it didn't go down and down and down till you just went, oh, I'm exhausted, or I don't know the answer to that, and I will stop doing the survey. So it was shorter, and it showed quite a lot of insights, didn't it? And actually it was tracking, the figures were tracking better. But I think it has made people think about it a lot more, and I think that's one of the positive benefits of it. And again, sort of, I think we're looking forward to sort of next time to sort of see the level of responses improving.
I think we're tremendously proud of the initiative, and to have data on 19,000 professionals within your industry. No other industry in the UK has that. to the level that we have, the understanding, and that's recognised at government level. You know, government are looking and saying, as an industry, that is really impressive, and the fact that you are taking responsibility for tracking characteristics and identifying where further work needs to be done so that people feel included is essentially an industry-leading initiative. So that's something we should be really proud of. But you know, it's because everybody cares about it, you know, and gives up the time to do it. And the value that's come back, I think, since is that if a member across all of our organisations, if they've had over a certain amount filling in, they can see their cut of data in comparison to the industry standard. So they can see how do we represent then on gender versus the industry average? How do we represent on disability, social mobility, all those kind of things. So there's really, really useful data for the individual companies in that.
Do you have confidence that the members are taking that data away and actually, you know, taking actions? I mean, obviously there's lots of positives within the survey, but you could pick out, you know, negative points as well. Over half of women felt taking parental leave had negatively impacted their career. I mean, that's obviously quite a shocking stat, isn't it? So what sort of interactions do you have with members in terms of steps they're putting into their own organisations to try and address, you know, some of these points that are coming up in the survey?
I think certainly with the marketers, obviously this is their marketing team one part of their overall business. Yeah. So they may also have other initiatives as well as All In that they're working through. Yeah. But yeah, they were really engaged and wanted to understand. You know, obviously all of it's completely confidential, but they wanted to know the kind of general picture of their businesses, because they want to put steps in place. Little simple things like when you have a meeting asking if anyone has any accessibility requirements, you know, just those little changes can make a real difference. Yeah. And make people feel welcome coming into the building. So I think it, you know, they're definitely taking it on board and using it.
I also think we're going to see a change in that. Having been in the business for quite a long time, where presenteeism was the norm, and actually people were feel very uncomfortable if they left at 6 o'clock to have supper with their children and put them to bed, you know, because you should, you know, agency land, obviously notorious for sort of working long hours. Whereas I think because of the pandemic, it's done us, you know, some favours, and obviously it's done some things that are not so welcome. But I think we're beginning to sort of feel our way through a new working environment and what will be the new norms. And so I think that figure, because of how we're working and how people are trusting each other more, and it's all about outcomes and outputs rather than, well, where were you when you did it? I think we're going to see that figure. I think we're going to see that figure naturally change over time, because you can empower people by giving them talks and training and saying, do you know what I mean, don't feel like that, or whatever it is. But actually, I think the bigger trend picture will do more than actually individual initiatives, because it's down to the personal relationship they have in their team and what that team's like. And it's a very slow-moving needle, I think, that one. But my sort of ambition and my hope is that we will see changes in that as we go through. And I know as a boss with people with children, I'm much more amenable to, do you know what I mean, the whole situation now. I felt particularly sorry for them when they had to homeschool their children. I think they should have, do you know what I mean, all got medals for that. But yeah, I think it's a change.
I think it's important to add, though, on the All In census data, there's now there has been, you know, for the last 2+ years, a working group on each of the characteristics. They're gifted the data, they come from the industry, and they discuss, right, okay, what's the one action that we need to see people do in order to make improvements around that characteristic. And then what's been set up around that is the All In champion status. So companies across membership are asked to provide evidence that they've put those actions into place, and they achieve All In champion status. And we have over 100 organisations now in the industry who have that status. So it is action focused.
Yeah. Great. Let's talk about Ad Net Zero. That's another big initiative that you've all been involved in. Matt, how do you feel we're making progress in that area at the moment against the goals of 2030 to be
So candidly, we are slow, and there is a massive challenge to address at the most urgent pace the changes that we need to make. And really you can sort of break those into two things. We need to think about the whole decarbonisation of the ad industry, the way we work. So that's the operations, the production and the distribution, and frankly, not enough people are taking responsibility for, carbon emissions and the footprint and understanding and reducing that yet. And then there is the second part, which is really understanding the products and services that we are promoting and advertising, and having a clear understanding of how they are contributing to a more sustainable future. And there is so much work to do around that. The ASA, which is a sort of, at a distance body that kind of we connect with, is regularly updating the guidance around environmental claims. That's causing all sorts of communications challenges for us to understand.
Yeah.
And we need to see more work that clearly evidences a sustainable benefit as well as a commercial benefit. And I don't think we know how to evaluate that yet. We're still working that out, but it can't happen quickly enough, frankly.
Abby, any perspective from you on that?
Matt's right. We can't underestimate the challenge, and it's certainly not through a lack of desire by the industry. I mean, our members' sustainability is, huge for them, not just within their advertising, but the rest of their business as well. So it's certainly not through a lack of belief and desire to bring about this change. It's just massive. So we get involved in lots of initiatives, Ad Net Zero being the biggest one, but. Yeah, I mean, it is a toughie.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds a bit doom and gloom, right? It's not doom and gloom. So we've got tools, we've got initiatives, we've got training, we've got, and I think we've had, with the IPA, we developed the Ad Net Zero training. We've had, I think, close to 1,500 people go through that training in the UK. That's okay. But my view is that every single person working in the industry should be doing that training to really understand the impact of their work, the changes that they should make, and then how they go about doing that. And you look at something like Cannes Lions and you say, okay, well, we advocated going down by train. How many people from the UK ad industry could have gone down by train but didn't and still flew? Okay, and if they flew, how many of those people offset their flights? Just to, is the behaviour changing fast enough? It's there, we know what it is.
Tessa, any views from you?
No, not really. I think it's sort of been covered. I just think we just need to make sure people are very aware of the calculators and the tools and the training that's out there, and get more people to engage with it. I think that's the obvious next phase, because all the work's been done. We need people to now,
So, and across all our work streams, this is, from a comms point of view, this is the one that worries me the most. Right? This is the one where when I look at a reputational threat to our industry and the industry we represent, this is the biggie. It's essentially, my shorthand for it is it's tobacco times 100. Okay, because tobacco is it was a one issue where the industry historically defended the right to sort of advertise a product which health professionals were saying, well, but that's killing people. This time round, every sector is wrestling with how I shift from being carbon intensive, if you like, to more sustainable. So the opportunity for people to say, well, we should ban that, we should ban that, we should ban that, is from every direction. And so really understanding that and considering how we are going to respond responsibly to that over, let's be honest, the next 6.5 years is the time frame we've got to do it. It's a big issue for us to get our heads around.
Yeah.
And it's not just a UK issue, this is a global issue.
Yeah.
And the UK is pushing ahead with AdNet Zero, it's coming out of the UK into a now, global initiative. So other markets are catching up and they're, really interested in it. But I think it will be the only thing that, from a comms point of view, as we reach the latter part of this decade, I think it'll be the only thing we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, let's get our skates on. Good soundbite as well, tobacco times 100. Tessa, coming over to you in terms of an IPA-specific asset, one of the things you're involved in is the IPA Touchpoints database. Tell us about that and obviously how that's used in the industry. It's a database looking at consumer behaviour, isn't it, across Great Britain?
It filled a gap, I think, 15 plus years ago, where you had the databases for Bourn and so on and so forth, so you could see, by medium, what was going on. And what Touchpoints set out to do, and has been successfully doing ever since, in fact the survey happens twice a year, is that it basically asks, 3,000 to 6,000 consumers over a week how they're consuming media and how they're feeling about certain things in life and in general. And that data is actually then able to be used against the other sort of other databases and research surveys that are out there. So it has been tremendously useful. So for example, given that there isn't 100% reach anymore, and you have a particular target audience, through this database you can sort of see the touch points throughout the week when they will be more engaged with your messages and what you're likely to sort of want to chat to them to. I mean, some of the things are very obvious. This is pre-pandemic, which was, people were happiest at the weekend and happiest as they left work, which is obviously probably a no-brainer, but that shows how accurate it is. So we've been running that for quite some time now. And last year, what the data was showing us was that people were beginning to worry about cost of living. They were beginning to sort of be worried about the economy. If you remember, we were having lots of headlines about how the recession was coming, supply chain issues and so on and so forth. This year it's all about people putting on hold some of their plans. So people who were planning to retire are now sort of thinking, well, I will hold off on that a bit. People who may have been planning to go to university, holding off on that a bit. People telling us that actually when they go shopping at the supermarket, actually 60% of the panel were saying they're looking for the cheapest item on the shelf. So they're feeling, between 40 and 60% are feeling their wages aren't covering their sort of living expenses. So we can see that, and all the things that we read about in the newspapers, absolutely reflected in this panel, that actually there's a real tightening on the purse strings. It also shows that digital penetration between 16 and 34-year-olds is at peak, but actually it's still growing for the over 55s, who've got more engaged because of COVID, because obviously they had to Zoom with their grandchildren if they wanted to talk to them, which was obviously up to them. So that's an area that's still growing, but it's fascinating to see, and obviously the binge watching during COVID. So it's been tracking very accurately what's been going on. So it's a fascinating survey.
Yeah.
I love Touchpoints. I gotta say, because it sort of feeds my media interests and kind of, the whole kind of, okay, how are people consuming media? When are they doing it? And it's just so rich with all of that data. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I'll stay with you for a minute, Matt, because one of the areas you look at is public trust in advertising, part of the Advertising Association. What's your view? I mean, it's been an issue for quite some time, public trust in advertising. Where do you think we are at the moment on that subject?
We've had really good success with the advertising campaign that we've done in partnership with the ASA. We've had brilliant support from brands stepping forward in that campaign, and also media owners, providing advertising space for that. So one of the things that we know, or that we kind of wanted to test and now know, is that if people are aware that they can complain about an ad, should they not be happy with it, they are more likely to generally trust advertising. There's a sort of brand value in advertising, the ASA. So we've done a test campaign in Scotland, great results back. We then ran it UK-wide, fantastic results. We're now scaling that campaign even more. That rebuilds trust. The other things that we really need to be focusing on, frankly, on the kind of public trust of advertising, is the better the creative quality of the advertising, the better people respond. So it sort of comes back to great ads by talented people for brilliant brands, people respond really well to them. And then on the flip side of it is the sort of concerns about bombardment, the kind of, just too many ads, seeing the same ad too many times. And that's something that ISBA is with Origin, is really grappling with to address from a...
Yeah.
We talk about the public as being our most important customer. Right? So we need to provide the best customer service. Well, that's the highest quality ads in a way that they engage with and don't find annoying. I think is really the principles behind it.
Yeah. Abby, Matt's just mentioned their Origin, and I was going to ask you about cross-media measurement. That's obviously something that ISBA that you're heavily involved in. So tell us about that project, and again, some of the challenges perhaps of dealing with different stakeholders.
Yeah, so that project absolutely came about because advertisers for a long, long time have wanted to be able to work out who's been served their ads across different, the same person seeing ads across different media. In real time, almost always on, just being able to do that. And it was thought that it was impossible to achieve, was kind of the old way of thinking. But there's been a kind of movement in the UK, which coincided with a movement globally with WFA and in the US to actually say, let's tackle this. So the WFA set out their sort of principles of what cross-media measurement program should adhere to, and then we've gone and built it in the UK. And I can say we've built it because we're in phase 4, and we are actually having 5 advertisers running their data through it. So we are tantalisingly close to actually having this product out in the world, which will be amazing. It will be really groundbreaking for our advertisers, and that's not my words. That's the words they're using about it. And we think with good wind, we will be launching at the end of next year, after more trials, obviously. So yeah, it's super exciting. It has been a challenge. And I think it's no secret that the broadcasters didn't come on board at the beginning. We've engaged with them the whole way through, though, so the conversations are ongoing. And they had their reservations for various reasons, and they're things we've had to address. It's been a challenge because you are trying to manage. I mean, the stakeholder group. You've got two of the biggest tech companies in the world. You've got advertising agencies. You've got brands. You've got other media owners. So it's just a huge amount of people. So it really is incredible that it's. And thanks. I'm not going to put myself in it. Thanks to the Origin guys and people in our media team that they have got the project to where it's at. But it was frustrating for the last sort of 6 months. When are we going to launch for phase 4? When are we going to launch phase 4? And then obviously then they wanted it done within a week, so it happened. But I was thrilled. We got some really good coverage, Chairperson and also the FT, which was fantastic. And yeah, it just feels good to have got that next milestone out of the way.
Origin is amazing because at the heart of it is kind of effectiveness and efficiency of ad spend and ad frequency. But the knock-ons, almost like side effect benefits, are superb because it is about supporting that rebuilding public trust. It's also about reducing frequency, which reduces carbon emissions. So we can actually make a positive contribution to decarbonising because if you think about it, every time you serve an ad at the moment, you burn a bit of the planet. So there's a kind of a responsibility then in how many times you serve that ad and what sort of response you're looking for from that ad. And that's the picture that I think Origin will help us really kind of understand.
Do you want to do the PR?
I'd love to.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing how that progresses. That's obviously very exciting that you're at phase 4 now. And that we're nearly at the end of our discussion. We've obviously covered quite a lot of ground. I think just be good to end on your general sort of thoughts on how optimistic you are about the future of the industry. Obviously, you've all worked in this industry for a long period of time now. And give me your perspective, Tessa, on what the future looks like. Are you optimistic?
I think we're an optimistic group of people. So I would say the answer is always yes, because I think if you're not optimistic, it means you feel you can't change things, you can't control things. I'm a horse rider, so do you know what I mean? It's all about controlling the animal, do you know what I mean? Changing the pace, and, surviving, essentially, with a smile on your face. That's a terrible analogy. But anyway, so again, it's all about how we can contribute, what we need to do. I think what I really hope to see is, again, I haven't liked over this last year, this sort of rise of clickbait and unbalanced articles, which I think wind people up if they're sort of just reading headlines or one sentence. And not, considered pieces than considered sort of debate and argument. I think we need to get a little bit back to that, and I think people are beginning to want that again. Do you know what I mean? I think the fad of clickbait is, people are bored of it and they don't trust it, and I think it's not doing anyone any good. So I think people are looking for informed debate, honest opinion, and also problem solving as to how we can make this better. So yes, I'm tremendously optimistic.
Abby, how about yourself?
Yeah, me too. She's right. We're an optimistic bunch. But, there's still, people still love advertising.
Yeah.
People still love the Christmas ads. Advertising is a real force for good. We've seen campaigns that have changed behaviour. So there's all these really, really positive things. And as Tessa said, there is still a lot of crap that needs fixing. And that's kind of where we get our plumbers' helmets on, or whatever plumbers wear, tool belts. But yeah, I think we've got to make some changes, but we've got a positive future.
Yeah. Matt?
So I think the strengths of the industry are creativity, the creative minds that are in, the strategic minds that are in there, and also the technological kind of minds that we've got. And when you put those things together, it's impossible not to be optimistic about what that combination within the UK industry is capable of when it applies it to the biggest issues that we face, including inclusion, trust, climate change. I think when I look at the kind of next 12 months, we'll be hitting an election. We're going to hit, so the macro picture, I think, is a new government. I think a more politicised debate around some of these things, more polemic debate, and I agree with Tessa that we need to find, the role of each of the associations is to find a centre ground consensus.
Yeah.
So we look for that, but I think our media is a very polemic kind of debate, even within our industry trade media. And I think we need to kind of sometimes be able to bring it back to, okay, but the way through this is this practical solution to solve this particular problem, and not be quite so polemic and extreme in the challenges, because they are solvable. We do know what we need to do.
Yeah.
So optimistic, yes, but I think we are in, the UK from an economic point of view, it's going to go for a fairly tough period as well. We're in a tough period, and it's going to carry on for a while. I don't envy the next government.
Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Look, we've covered quite a lot in the course of our discussion, and obviously there's some areas that we need to improve on. We've talked about the climate, we've talked about inclusion, but we've also talked about a lot of the amazing work that is being done in the industry. And what's pleasing from my perspective, listening to three comms leaders, is that you are all collaborating, and actually you do enjoy getting together, and you're encouraging more interaction with the wider industry, and ultimately to get the change that we all want, we do have to come together as an industry. So it's been fascinating to talk to you today. I'd love you to come back on a future Comms Club episode in another year's time perhaps, but for the time being, thank you to Matt Bourn, Abby Slater and Tessa Gooding.
Thank you very much.